Thanks, Mike. Matthew. I said Mike there. Yeah, thank you very much. Hey, well, Easter is coming up next week. I remember when I was a kid, we used to shop at this store called Alpha Beta. That was like Kroger or Meijer. And I remember looking at all these giant Easter baskets, you know, they were wrapped with all these toys and candy and all these like action figures, and wrapped in cellophane. They looked awesome. And I always thought, man, if my mom really loved me, she would buy me one of these awesome Easter baskets. And you know what? She must have hated me, because she never did. She never bought me any of that stuff. In fact, every Christmas is pretty much the same. And I'm sure when my mom put it together, it looked amazing, because she'd have a basket with that fake grass, and then there would be like an apple and an orange, and then she probably poured at least one bag of jelly beans just on top of it. And so it must have looked great, but in the morning when I got to it, like gravity had done its job, and so I would see like an apple and an orange and all this grass, and then I would look at the grass and there would just be like a pool of jelly beans. And I was always jealous of all the other kids that would like come to school and have like candy from Easter. I was like, man, that must be nice. Like I totally wanted that stuff. So thankfully, Easter is not about that. But you know, how often do we really talk about what Easter is all about, and what we're going to celebrate next week? Well, this morning, we're going to talk about that. And it all begins at the beginning of time, at the dawn of time. Dawn of time, right? And it begins with when God created this world. It was just us and God, and us in the form of Adam and Eve, two real people. So it's just them and God. And God goes, I created this whole place for you, and I want you to have it. And also, you should know that there's one thing you should know. And this is what he says. He says, you may freely eat from the fruit of every tree in the garden, except the tree of knowledge of good and evil. If you eat its fruit, you are sure to die. So I've made all this for you, and just so you know, if you eat fruit from this tree, you're going to die. So if I were you, I would avoid it. But you decide for yourself, right? Well, Satan in the form of a serpent comes and tricks Adam and Eve, right, into taking the fruit they couldn't get. And in that moment, when they disobeyed God, they sinned and they separated themselves from God. And it created this huge chasm between them that could never be fixed. There was forever this separation of man and God. Of God saying, man, I love you, I want to be a part of your life, and us saying, that's awesome, but we kind of want to do our own thing. Anytime you have ever done something that you knew you shouldn't, that is called sin. And we all have done it. And if you think you haven't done it, you just did it just now, this 1 second. And it's hard because we look at Adam and Eve and we're like, how could you be so dumb, right? Except we do it all the time. They're like, the serpent says, you know, surely you won't die. God says you're going to die, but really what it's going to happen is if you eat this fruit, you're going to become just like God. And Adam and Eve were like, you know what? I don't know who this snake is. I bet he's right? And so they're like, they know in their hearts they're not supposed to do this thing, and yet they're like, well, what does God know? I'll be fine, so I'm going to do it. And we do it all the time. We know we're not supposed to do it, and we're just like, I know I'm not supposed to do that, but I'll be fine. I'm going to do it myself. And so in that way, we choose our own destiny, right? We choose that we're going to be the boss. God's not going to be the boss of us. You're not the boss of us, right? Instead, we are going to be the boss. So in that moment, we sin, and there's nothing we can do to restore that relationship. It is broken, forever broken. There's this huge gap until Jesus comes. And that is what we're talking about. No matter how hard we might try, there's nothing we can do on our own to make our lives right with God. No matter, some people are like, well, maybe if I just go to church enough, if I just go to church, or maybe if I just give enough money to the church, or maybe if I do a good job, if I'm a good person, or maybe, if I stop doing bad things, then maybe I can make my way back to God. But no matter how hard you try, no matter how far you can jump, you are never going to make it. There's nothing you can do on your own to make things right between you and God. It's it. It's hopeless, except for what we celebrate with Easter, with what Jesus did. So we're going to fast forward the story of Jesus to Friday morning. We call this Good Friday, and you can't have Sunday without Friday. So this is Friday morning, 7-ish in the morning, when this takes place. Right here in John 19. So the soldiers took charge of Jesus, carrying his own cross. He went out to the place of the skull, which in Aramaic is called Golgotha, and there they crucified him with two others, one on each side, and Jesus in the middle. If you've been to church, you've heard this story a long time, that Jesus died on the cross for you. Well, what that looked like is after they had whipped Jesus with a thing called a cat of nine tails. It was this leather whip that on the end of it, it had like pieces of broken glass and sharp rocks and metal, and they would take it and they would tear it across his back. And so after being bloodied, bludgeoned, they take him, he carries his cross, they lay him on the cross, they take one arm and they put a nail right in his wrist. Bam, nails it down. They take his other arm, they stretch it out as long as they can, sometimes dislocating the shoulder, and they put a nail, each nail, in this one. Then they put his legs together, they bend his knees, they put his legs together, and they drive one last nail in his ankle bones between both of them. So he's laying on there in shock from all this pain, and then they lift this giant cross up, and it falls into this like hole in the ground that's going to hold the cross up there. Bam! All the weight of his body on these three nails. And then you're up there, everyone's spitting at you, cussing at you, saying all kinds of things about you. People are making fun of him. Hey, you said you're God. If you're God, why don't you just jump off that cross? Why don't you just show us who you really are? And the hard part is that Jesus can't breathe. You can't breathe when you're up there. And so you are like doing everything you can to deal with the pain. And then in order to breathe, Jesus had to put all of his weight on the nail that was holding his ankles and press up against it in order to lift his chest up big enough to get a breath. And then when he couldn't hold the pain any longer, he would have to sink back down again and be hanging from the nails in his wrists. This was a real thing that happened. It is not a fairy tale story. It's not just a church story. This is real. For 6 hours, he hung on that cross. John continues the story. He says, later, knowing that everything had now been finished, so that the scripture would be fulfilled, Jesus said, I am thirsty. A jar of wine vinegar was there, so they soaked a sponge in it, put the sponge on a stalk of hyssop plant, and lifted it to Jesus' lips. And when he had received the drink, Jesus said, it is finished. And when Jesus did that, he built a bridge for us, between us and God. That we could walk across that bridge and have a right relationship with God. You see, the idea is that Jesus lived the perfect life. He lived the life we should have lived, and he died the death that we should have died. And in that way, he took our place. He was our substitute so that we could have peace with God. And we could be with God forever. The big idea this morning is that Jesus died and rose again because he loves you. And he loves you so much that he gave his life so that he didn't have to be separated from you any longer. That is how much God loves you. And nothing can keep God from loving you. No matter what is going on in your life, no matter what habit you're struggling with, no matter what bad thing you have done in the past, no matter what people say about you, God loves you. You are his child. You are God's masterpiece. And he was willing to sacrifice his own son so that you could be in relationship with him forever. He loves you so much. And Jesus' death and resurrection, the celebration of Easter, proves it. It is what he is all about, and that is loving you. He wants to be in relationship with you. So I want you to think about what is that's standing between you and God. It's nothing on God's end. He's done everything he can to have a relationship with you, and now it's up to you. It is up to you to believe in this story, that it really happened, that it really took place. And then if you believe it, to repent, to change your life, to switch bosses, to step from this side and going, I'm going to be the boss of my life, to going, God, if you are real, if this is real, and you really want to have a relationship with me, then Lord, then I want you to be the boss of my life. I'm not going to be the boss anymore. You're the boss. What do you want to do? Not what I want to do with my life, but what do you want to do with my life? The idea is that it is finished. It is finished. Now it is up to you. It's up to you. And you can have that peace with God today. We want to encourage you. If you've never made that decision before, if you've never said, God, I do believe in you, God, I want to follow you, you can do that today. Through prayer, through just knowing it, saying to God, God, I want to follow you. There's no magic words to pray or magic things to do. It is about you believing in your heart, this is real. And God, I want to follow you. Again, Jesus died and rose because he loves you. I'm going to pray for you in just a second. And after I pray, we're going to go to small groups. And I want you to think about, what is this one thing? What is one thing that's standing between you and God? What is that one thing that's standing between you and God? Let me pray for you. God, thank you for sending your Son. Jesus, thank you for being so obedient even unto death. And God, for my friends in this room that have never made that decision, never said they want to follow you, God, would you hear their hearts? Would you hear their hearts as they pray? And if this is where you are at, maybe it's something you want to pray to yourself silently and saying, God, I need you in my life. Forgive me for trying to be my own boss, for my own life that I've lived. Forgive me for my sins. And help me believe. And help me follow you. Help me trust you. Thank you for what you've given. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for dying on the cross. And thank you for Easter. Lord, we pray those things together. We do love you. We thank you. We pray these things in your name. Amen. All right, we're going to give you just a couple minutes because we're running way short on time. Then we're going to jump back into small groups with very